There is a certain comfort in isolation, isn't there? A quiet drive on an empty highway, a cabin miles from the nearest town, or a hotel room where no one knows your name. We go to these places to escape the noise of the world, to find peace, but when the cell service dies and the lights go out, you realize that silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's waiting. Tonight, I have three true horrifying stories from people who went looking for solitude, but found something else entirely. These stories might make you look in your back seat, check your closets, or rethink that next road trip. So pull the covers up tight, lock your doors, turn off the lights, and listen close. I haven't been back to my hometown in years. Honestly, I never planned to. It's one of those forgotten, dying towns in the Midwest where the main industry left 20 years ago, and everything else just slowly crumbled afterwards. But it was New Year's, and the guilt of not seeing my two brothers finally got to me. I drove in late on December 30th. Since both my brothers had serious girlfriends living with them in their small apartments, I didn't want to be the third wheel sleeping on a couch, so I decided to book a room. The only option was this place right off the gravel highway. It didn't even have a proper name on the sign anymore. Just the word motel, with the letter E flickering on and off. It was a single-story L-shaped building that looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint since the 1980s. When I pulled it to the lot, it was dead silent. The gravel crunched loudly under my tires, a sound that felt way too aggressive in the quiet night. There was only one other vehicle there, an ancient, rusted-out Chevy pickup truck parked crookedly near the office. I walked into the lobby. It smelled like stale cigarettes and mildew. The lighting was dim, just a single buzzing lamp behind the counter. Sitting there was an older man, maybe late 60s. He had a scruffy gray beard that looked unwashed. When I walked in, he jumped. He physically recoiled, like he wasn't expecting a human being to walk through that door. He looked at me with tired eyes and grumbled, "Need a room?" I paid wash. He didn't ask for an ID, he just handed me a heavy brass key and pointed to room 12, way at the end of the dark walkway. The room was exactly what you'd expect. Sticky carpet, freezing air. But I was tired. I threw my bag on the table, checked the bed for bugs, and passed out. The first night was weird. Around 3 a.m., I woke up. You know that feeling when the silence wakes you up? I lay there staring at the ceiling, and then I heard it. Thump, thump, thump. It was a slow, rhythmic knocking. It sounded like it was coming from the far end of the motel. I listened as a heavy door creaked open, groaned on rusty hinges, and then slammed shut. I figured it was just the old pipes. The next morning, the lobby was locked, dark. The old man wasn't there, but that pickup truck was still in the exact same spot. When I got back that second night, the vibe had shifted. It felt hostile. As I walked down the long concrete walkway to my room, the motion sensor lights didn't turn on. I had to use my phone flashlight. I got inside, locked the deadbolt, and tried to watch TV, but I couldn't focus. I kept hearing footsteps outside, not heavy ones, just a shuffling sound, like boots dragging on concrete. I went to the window and peeked through the gap in the curtains. There he was, the old clerk. He was standing about 50 feet away under the only working light pole. He was just standing there, staring at the ground. Then he slowly looked up, right at my window. He raised a hand and waved stiffly, motioning for me to come out. "Hey," he yelled. "Office! Come to the office!" It sent a chill down my spine. Why was he yelling across the lot at 11 p.m.? Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "What do you need?" I shouted back. He didn't answer. He just turned around and walked around the corner toward the lobby. I followed him, but when I rounded the corner, nothing. The lobby was pitch black. The door was locked. I felt sick. A heavy feeling in my gut told me, "Go back to your room. Lock the door." The third night is when it all fell apart. I came back late, around midnight. I parked next to that truck again. I walked to my room, head down, fishing for my key. When I got to room 12, I froze. The door was cracked open, about 2 inches. I knew I had locked it. I vividly remembered turning the deadbolt. I pushed the door open with my foot. The room was dark. "Hello?" I called out. Silence. I didn't go in. I ran back to my car, popped the trunk, and grabbed a tire iron. I walked back to the room, heart pounding in my ears. I reached in, flipped the light switch, and scanned the room. My suitcase was on the bed, open. My clothes were tossed around, but nothing was missing. It wasn't a robbery. Someone had just been looking. I grabbed my suitcase, threw everything in messily, and ran back to the car. I threw the gear in the passenger seat. I put the car in reverse, and my headlights swept across the front of the motel rooms. That's when I saw him, the old man. He was standing inside my room. He was peeking out from the bathroom doorway, just watching me leave. He wasn't angry. He was smiling. A wide, toothless smile. I drove straight to the county sheriff's office. I told them everything. The old man, the break-in, the weird knocking. The deputy looked at me confused. "The old highway motel?" he asked. "Son, that place has been condemned for 18 months. I argued with him. I told him about the clerk, the lights, the key he gave me. We drove back out there together. When we arrived, the place was pitch black. No neon sign, no lobby light. The deputy shone his spotlight on the building. The windows were boarded up. The door to room 12, where I had stayed, was hanging off its hinges. We went inside. There was no bed, just a bare mattress on the floor surrounded by trash, beer cans, and old food wrappers. The clerk wasn't an employee. He was a squatter, a homeless drifter who had broken into the abandoned building. The police found a stash of stolen driver's licenses in the back office. He had been checking in travelers for months, taking their kawaish and giving them keys to rooms in a building that shouldn't have had anyone in it. And for 3 nights, I slept down the hall from him, alone in the dark. This happened 2 years ago. My parents own a small A-frame cabin in the mountains of Washington State. It's a beautiful place, tucked away in a dense pine forest, miles from the nearest paved road. We usually go there as a family for Christmas, but that year I had some time off work, so I decided to drive up a day early to prep the house and get the fireplace going. I arrived around 4 o'clock p.m. The sun was already setting behind the peaks, casting these long purple shadows across the snow. It was peaceful. I unpacked, chopped some wood, and got a roaring fire started. There was no Wi-Fi, no TV, just me, in the silence of the mountain. The next morning, I woke up to a winter wonderland. It had snowed about 3 inches overnight. The world was pristine, white, and untouched. I made a pot of coffee and decided to take a walk around the property line. It's about a 2-mile loop. I bundled up, heavy coat, scarf, boots, and headed out. The air was crisp, stinging my lungs in a good way. For the first mile, everything was normal. Just deer tracks and the sound of snow crunching under my boots. But when I circled back toward the north side of the property, I stopped. Right there, cutting across the pristine snow, was a set of footprints, human footprints. They were large, heavy boot prints, the kind with deep treads. I felt a little unease, but I rationalized it. Maybe a hunter or a hiker who got lost. But we were miles from the trailhead. I followed the tracks with my eyes. They came from the thick woods and were heading straight toward the cabin. My stomach dropped. I picked up my pace. I followed the trail of footprints, my heart beating faster with every step. The tracks led out of the tree line, across the open yard, and right up the stairs to the front porch. I stood at the bottom of the porch stairs, gripping my coffee mug so hard my knuckles turned white. I looked for the tracks leading away. I looked left, right, back down the stairs. There were no tracks leaving. Whoever walked up these stairs hadn't walked back down. Then the realization hit me like a physical punch. When I left for my walk 45 minutes ago, I didn't lock the front door. I never do. We're in the middle of nowhere. Why would I? I stared at the front door. It was closed, just how I left it. But now it felt like a barrier between me and something terrible. Was he inside? Was he watching me right now through the window? I slowly backed away, reaching into my pocket for my phone. No service, of course. I had 2 choices: run to my car and leave, or go inside and get my keys and weapon. My car keys were on the kitchen counter. My gun, a shotgun my dad keeps for bears, was in the master bedroom closet. I couldn't leave without the keys. I took a deep breath, pulled my hunting knife from my belt, and quietly walked up the steps. I turned the knob. It was unlocked. I pushed the door open and listened. Silence. Just the crackling of the fire I had built earlier. "Hello?" I called out. My voice shook. Nothing. I stepped inside, leaving the door wide open for an escape route. I scanned the living room, empty. Kitchen, empty. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. I should have left right then, but I felt violated. This was my family's home. I needed to know. I checked the guest room. Clear. I checked the bathroom. Clear. The only room left was the master bedroom at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. I walked down the hallway, the floorboards creaking under my weight. I pushed the bedroom door open with the tip of my knife. The bed was made. The room looked undisturbed. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe the tracks were from yesterday and I just missed them? No, it snowed last night. They had to be fresh. I turned to leave the bedroom. And then I heard it. A soft, wet cough. It came from the closet directly behind me. I didn't turn around. Adrenaline took over. I sprinted. I ran down the hall, through the living room and out the front door, jumping off the porch into the snow. I scrambled into my truck, jammed the keys in, and roared the engine to life. As I was backing out of the driveway, I looked up at the cabin window. The master bedroom curtains were pulled back. A man was standing there. He was huge, wearing a torn, heavy coat. He just watched me drive away, his hand pressed against the glass. I drove to the nearest town and called the sheriff. They sent a unit out with K9s. They found the guy a few hours later, hiking through the woods about 5 miles north. He was an escaped convict from a minimum security work camp 2 counties over. When they searched the cabin, they found a makeshift bed made of my clothes inside the closet. He had been in there the whole time. He had watched me walk into the room. He was armed with a sharpened screwdriver. If I had opened that closet door, I wouldn't be telling you this story. I've done a lot of road trips in my life. I love the freedom of it. But after what happened in Oregon, I don't think I'll ever drive at night again. I was driving a rental car, a cheap sedan, cutting through a back road in northern Oregon to avoid traffic on the Interstate 5. The road was narrow, winding through towering Douglas fir trees that blocked out the moonlight. It was pitch black. I was listening to a podcast, zoning out. When the low fuel chime dinged, I looked down, 20 miles to empty. I checked the GPS on my phone mounted on the dash. It showed a gas station in 18 miles. Cutting it close, I thought, but I'll make it. I kept driving. 10 minutes passed. I looked at the GPS again. 18 miles. That was weird. I refreshed the app. The spinning wheel just turned and turned. No signal. The map was frozen. I looked at the bonds gauge. The needle was below the E. Panic started to set in. I turned off the AC and the radio to save power. Not that it really helps, but it made me feel like I was doing something. The car started to sputter. No, 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 I whispered. The engine coughed. The power steering locked up, and the car coasted to a silent stop on the side of the road. The silence was instant and oppressive. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel. No service, no passing cars, just me and millions of trees. According to the frozen GPS, the gas station was maybe 10 miles away, maybe 15. I couldn't stay in the car. It was getting cold. The temperature dropping into the 30s. I grabbed my flashlight, zipped up my jacket, locked the car, and started walking. The fog rolled in about 20 minutes later. It was thick, white soup. My flashlight beam just reflected back at me, blinding me more than helping. I had to walk on the white line of the shoulder just to stay on the road. I walked for what felt like an hour. My legs were burning. The silence was broken only by the wind in the treetops. Then, I saw something ahead, a shape on the side of the road. Hope surged in my chest. A car. Maybe someone pulled over to sleep. I jogged toward it. "Hey, excuse me," I yelled. But as I got closer, I slowed down. It was a sedan similar to mine, but it wasn't parked. It was shoved nose first into the ditch, half hidden by overgrown blackberry bushes. The trunk was popped open. The driver's side door was hanging open. I shined my light inside. The seats were slashed. The glove box was ripped out. This wasn't an accident. This car had been stripped. And then I noticed something that made my blood freeze. The hood was cold, but there was a fresh, muddy handprint on the rear bumper. Someone had pushed this car here recently. Snap. A twig broke in the woods to my right. I spun around, aiming my light at the tree line. Hello? Silence. Then another sound, rustling, not just one animal, it sounded like movement, organized movement. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Footsteps, heavy ones. I started walking faster. The footsteps in the woods matched my pace. I started jogging. The rustling turned into running. I realized with horror that I wasn't alone. There were people in the woods, plural, and they were hurting me. They were staying just out of sight in the fog, waiting for the right moment. I was about to sprint, to run until my lungs exploded, when I saw a glow behind me. Headlights. I ran into the middle of the road, waving my arms frantically. Stop! Stop! An old Ford F-150 slammed on its brakes, skidding to a halt inches from me. The window rolled down. An old farmer in a baseball cap looked at me with wide eyes. Get in, he yelled. He didn't ask questions. He sounded scared. I scrambled into the passenger seat. Before I even closed the door, he floored it. Tires spun on the asphalt, and we shot forward. I looked in the side mirror. In the red glow of the taillights, I saw them. 3 or 4 figures stepped out of the tree line onto the road where I had just been standing. They were dressed in dark clothes, holding things. Bats, pipes. I couldn't tell. They just stood there, watching the truck drive away. The farmer didn't say a word for 5 miles. His hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Finally, he spoke. You're lucky, son. People go missing on this stretch. Locals don't stop here at night. He drove me to the town. I waited at the sheriff's station until morning. When the tow truck and the police went back for my rental car the next day, it was gone. They found it 3 days later. It had been pushed 2 miles deep into a logging road, stripped for parts, and burned. If that farmer hadn't come around that corner at that exact second, I would have been dragged into those woods, and nobody would have ever found me. They say the most terrifying thing about the unknown is that it's usually staring right back at you. Whether it's a squatter hiding in an abandoned building, a stranger standing in your closet, or a trap set on a lonely road, the scary truth is, we are never truly alone. I hope these stories have got under your skin. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and tell me in the comments, which story terrified you the most? The motel, the cabin, or the road? If you have a true horror story of your own that you want to share, send it to the email in the description below. I would love to read it. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe and stay awake.